Hello. Let's see here. I'm going to use Photoshop to demonstrate how to do the shading on this drawing that you started. And you're going to follow along the original, try to capture the lights and the darks. But I'm going to show you with Photoshop, and you can use Procreate. There's and other uh, digital drawing programs. They all have the same basic tools: the brushes, the pencils. So let's see here. I'm going to bring up the image as reference. I need to All right, let's begin. And when I move over here, I want to try to keep everything very simple. Here, we're not using color, so I'm going to go to image mode, and I'm in grayscale. And on your palette, just make sure you don't use any hues or colors. You're just using different varieties of lights and darks. So I'm going to use my brush tool, and let me increase the brush size to begin with. And I'm going to make this, let's see here, opacity, which is how transparent, or I'm going to make that fairly low because I want to build up the shadows. I don't want to go directly into the darkest areas. Okay? So your opacity on your Procreate or other programs, you can change the transparency, the, the how much how much the value or the surface, how much of it you can see through the paint or the shading. Okay, so if I just put that over the eye right there, you notice it does get slightly darker, but you can still see what's underneath. Okay, and you know what? That just reminds me, over here on the right side, I'm going to create another layer. I don't want to leave your original drawing alone. Let me just go ahead and go back to the top layer. Okay, so I'm going to look at the original picture and just see what's going on here. So I'm going to make it a little bit darker. I just want to block in this area. I can use the select tool and select that whole area. And it's much quicker, but I just want to show you how this simple process of starting off with one shading, and you can do this with pencil as well. Um, so already you see the light's coming off the face because we're defining the shadows, and we need shadows and light. They work together. You notice the second layer that I'm putting on top, so the more diluted, the next layer that I put on, it just gets slowly darker and darker. And it just takes patience. And this demonstration, which I'm giving you, which is I start off with leaving the highlights alone, the brightest areas on the, and I'm using my finger here. I wish I could use I can't set up my iPad right now, but you can do this with your finger on the drawing pad. You can use a mouse if you wanted to. Gosh, I wonder if I have my mouse here. I do have a mouse. Okay, I might switch to a mouse a little bit later if my finger gets tired. But just look at that. Just we're not worried about perfect shading at this point. We're kind of molding and shaping like clay. Just the big sections of light and dark. And I'm just using that one gray that I chose. It's not black. It's not a light gray. It's kind of like I don't know, towards the darker end, maybe a 30% gray. And already you can see the face. It's separating out from the background, isn't it? What do you think? You know what? I need to switch to my mouse because this finger pad is not working. So give me a few seconds. All right. Yay, technology. All right, much better. And you notice the background of the original image is so dark. It's just so rich and just heavy, and it just it's like this velvety black, which is really strong contrast in this image. And why are we doing this? Why are we learning this technique? Well, so much of art and design, we can control the perspective, the qualities of your image. Like, we can determine how to make certain things look stronger and certain things kind of recede. Controlling this positive, negative lighting, within a scene applies to so many things in graphic design, through contrast, through fine arts. It's being able to kind of determine, I as the artist would like you to look at a certain portion of my composition. And by understanding light and dark and shading, we can control that. We can kind of navigate and move people to where we want them to look at what in the composition. This balance. It's correlates with our eyesight. We have over 100 million receptors in our eye dedicated to seeing light and dark. Not even color, just light and dark. It's very important for our eyes to receive the world around us and see the light. Where's the light coming from? And in this one, that's another good question, is to ask yourself, where is the light coming from in relationship to this figure? Is it coming from the right side? Is it coming from the left side? Is it coming from below? Is it coming from above? What do you guys think? It is coming from above, isn't it? So anything opposite above, from above, the shapes, you're gonna have shadow, and I'm gonna demonstrate that in a few seconds. I'm just taking my time. Patience. Gosh, isn't it important to have patience with art and design, and it's good to have demonstration, isn't it? So that's the purpose of this video, is to show you always step by step, just kind of, I'm just using one gray. I haven't even changed the gray level on this yet. And you change the gray level with pencil and charcoal with pressure, with how light and how much pressure you put onto your paper. And that's not even dark enough yet. Okay, so there we go. That's one level of light and dark in the background. Okay, now we're gonna go to using the same brush. You see how big that brush is? Now watch, I'm going to, oh, I gotta change the flow of this. And if you can change the flow, which means I don't wanna do it 100% pressure coming out of the brush. I wanna make it like maybe 58%. Okay, so it's gonna be a little bit less flow, a little more delicate flow. And if you can change that flow in your program, that's fine too. With pencil, you can do it with, again, pressure and how many lines or textures or shading you put into it. Okay, so let's look at this face here. If you look at the original, notice the right cheek of the model. See how when we study the skeleton, it follows along the jawline of the skeleton. So right there, we're just gonna draw in just that shape. Look at that, right there. Just one flat shape. We're contouring. It's almost like, I've never done makeup before. It could be, was it a contouring kind of process in makeup, for those of you who know makeup. And then as we go up to the side, the left side, look at the temple. Remember the skull study, the temple, it's a little bit depressed right here, a little bit flatter plane. So we're going to, that will help to define the forehead, which comes forward, okay? And that looks really cool. Look at that. Look at that right cheek, that simple kind of oval-like shape we put in there. Now I'm going to go in and make that a little bit, put another layer in there. And you notice towards the left side, it's a little bit darker. So I'm going to make this area just a little bit darker, closer to the edge of the head. All right. Now we're going to the bottom, the chin area. You notice that strong highlight, but look at that shadow underneath the lip. And I'm going to make the brush a little bit smaller. The lower lip is defined by the shadow underneath, so I'm going to put some shadows underneath here, right underneath the lip, not the lip itself. And I'm just going to build up that area. Okay. And now take a look at the upper lip. You see how dark it is? Let's just go ahead and paint in shade in the upper lip. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, just blocking in big areas of light and dark. That is so cool. Look at that. Now the lower lip feels like it's coming forward by virtue because of the surrounding darker values. And look at that chin, the mentum, whatever, on the skull coming, the bony part coming forward. And I'm using your lines, your basic coloring book shapes of the face as my guide. And it's really helpful. It really helps. Okay, now we're going to move up to the right side. You know what? Let's go up to the model's bottom left cheek next to the mouth. It's a little bit darker right here. So we're going to put a little triangle of shadow right there. Okay. As well as I want to contour, darken in the side of the face right here. Your left eye should be a little bit narrower. It should be a little bit closer to the face because it's farther away from us. That's just the perspective of the photograph, and I can compensate for that by making this a little bit darker. Okay, so I still have that light gray, and because it is opacity is fairly low, like 23%, it allows me to just slowly build up the values, and that's what we do with pencil. And okay, now we're going to go underneath the right nostril. We're going to make that darker, and this is where we remember from drawing one our studies of drawing the sphere and drawing the cubes, the cones. Look at that. So you see that shiny tip of the nose right there. We can make that shinier by making the area around it darker. Okay, I'm doing big areas right now. I'm not doing little tiny areas. And as we progress, I can make the brush smaller and smaller, and I keep working on the details. Okay, right now I'm not doing that. I'm really focusing on just getting the basic. I'm going to make the brush a little bit larger now, and I'm going to, you notice the left side of the face of the model is really in shadow. So I'm going to just go ahead and all along the the model's right side, I'm going to just darken that in, not completely, because it is perceptible. You can see a little bit of the eyelid on the left side of the model. And that says that is in shadow, and the left side, the model's right side, is in light. Wow, look at that. Okay, now we're going to move up to the temple, the forehead. And you notice where's the highlight of this temple? It's above the brow ridge. You see that? This area here is the lightest area. So I want to keep that. I don't want to leave that area alone, and I'm going to go towards the outside of this shape here on the top. I'm going to put some shadow in. Okay. And there's some fall off, some little shadow up on the top here. There's a little triangle. What do you guys think so far? Do you like where it's progressed since the beginning by using these simple shapes of layers of value and using transparency? Is that helpful? Do you see? Just doing that, we don't try to overcomplicate it, but just in this demo, look, it's made a difference. Okay, now we're done with that. Now I want to bring down, look between the top of the nose. Do you notice how the bridge of the nose, where it transitions into the forehead, there's a little bit of shadow right here in between the eyebrows? I'm going to put in that shadow right there. Okay, and then I'm going to make the brush a little bit smaller. Now I'm going to go into the eye. Okay, so on the eye, where is the highlight? It's on the upper eyelid, isn't it? You see that light area? So we're going to stay away from that area. We're going to just go around that, and we're going to do the mascara or the eyeliner, and look at that. You see that dramatic shadow over here, and that tells us that is recessed. It is farther away from us, and as it moves to the right, it gets darker right on the corner of the eye. You see that right there? That is so heavy. So we're going to put that in there. And it takes patience and balance. It's like cooking. You got to kind of understand your measurements of your lights and darks. And the key here is I don't want to make that center of that eyelid too dark. Now the eyelids themselves are fairly dark, right? So we're going to go in and I'm gonna make the brush a little bit smaller just to get a little more control finesse. So here I'm gonna just keep layering on the bottom of the eyelid and watch. It's just getting darker and darker and darker. And it's more about light and dark rather than lines now, isn't it? So with the lines, you define perspective, proportion, shape, and the scale. Now with the values, we are defining the planes, the surface of the face. And as I sweep across the bottom of the eyelids, a little bit dark, and then off to the corners, that's where we have the darker areas. Okay, and okay. Now the eyelid is too strong for me, so what I'm going to do is too bright. So I'm going to make the opacity much lighter, 6, and then I'm going to just put in like a really several layers of light grays. And the reason for that is if you look at the original picture, that's not as harsh, so it makes it more balanced, the light. There you go. That looks so much better. Now, okay, let's see. I think we're almost there. Wow, that's now I'm going to show you by going. I'm going to make the opacity bring it back up to, let's go 50%, 51, doesn't matter. All right, so now I'm going to go with a darker, bring my shadows, and really define the darker shadows in this piece. And let me make the brush a little bit bigger on my Photoshop, which is, quick key is parentheses. So let's just test this out here. I'm going to start on the right side. I'm going to really push back the shadows. I'm not even going to draw on the face at this point. I'm just going ahead and really pushing the shadows on the right side. And look what that does. My gosh, just changing the background. And I'm just not doing this willy-nilly. I'm really looking at the original photograph as reference. And look at that. It just brings out all the highlights in the face. And I'm not even touching the face here. It's just really, it shows you that our brain sees value in context to its environment. It compares the light and dark around the subject. This is the focal point, the portrait. By doing this, I'm eliminating some of the evidence of your lines, which is totally fine, because if you look at the original photograph, you really don't see lines, do you? Okay, just go ahead. Now, I don't want to make this video too long, but I think, does this give you a kind of the basic idea, the formula for creating shadows, which is step by step, layering of areas of gray. And you can use more of a crosshatch technique. That's fine. Some of you haven't really. One technique is blending is with a piece of tissue paper. And remember earlier in class we did do that technique of starting off with a light gray base tone and then bringing out the highlights and the shadows. So use that technique if you remember that technique as well. So now we'll go into the face a little bit more, contouring the right side. We've come a long way since the beginning here, haven't we? All right. So now I'm going to lighten this, go a little bit lighter with my gray. I'm going to change the opacity, bring it down to 26 again. And then I'm going to add a little more darker shadows in the existing shadows that I have. On the right side of the face, I'm going to put a little shadow on the cheek, a little bit more. And then on the, you notice on the bottom right-hand corner of the model, it's a little bit darker. It kind of connects to the corner of the mouth. On the other side, it's a little bit darker. Up on the temple, I'm going to make that a little bit darker. Okay, I'm going to make this brush smaller now, and I'm just going to wrap it up with some small little touch-ups. Let's see. And I'm going to go into the upper lip here because that is way too gray. We're going to make that darker. Okay, so there's like kind of like a bow, arch of the bow here, the archer's bow of the upper lip. And the lip itself is fairly gray, but on the corners of that lower lip, I'm going to make the corners a little bit, oops, I don't like that. I'm going to change that. I'm going to change the opacity a little bit further. Very light, kind of the corners of the lips. And on the other side, the right side of the lips here, I'm going to make it a little bit darker. So you see how that makes the front part of the lower lips really feel like they're coming out into that space. And the upper lip, look how it connects to the right side there. It's evidence of a muscle underneath there. I think that's called the Buccinator. It's a muscle that helps you blow like trumpets or blow out a candle. I think. Let's double check on that. Okay, now I'm gonna define that area a little bit more on the bottom right lip there. You know, when you get into the finer details of this anatomy, that's where studying the skull and muscles of the face really come back to help you. And if you haven't done that as of yet, go ahead and go to YouTube and look up some videos on how to draw those elements. That investment really helps you. That's really spotty there. How do I fix that? I'm going to use the smudge tool here. And let's see if we can blend that a little bit smoother. And if I had a tissue, or if this was drawn on a piece of paper, I would do this technique with a piece of tissue or a tortillon, the blending stick. Gosh, that's a little bit too dark. I'm not really super happy with that result. Let's see. 1 second. Go with the blur tool right here. I'm blurring it, blending it in so it's less obvious. The different little swirls that I see there. Okay, I think I'm almost done here. Let's finish off with a little bit darker. Notice those eyebrows. Look how strong they are. Opacity, we'll make that really strong. Look at that whole eyebrow there. What do you guys think? Was this helpful? Did this, if you want to go back and redo your piece and then watch the video and try your best and put the values in there, and I will take another look at it. You know, there comes a point where you gotta like say stop, you know, like you've done enough. Like, oh, one more, I'm gonna add a little more darkness to the upper lip on the bottom there. Slowly build up that surface. So what have you learned today? I think for me, the message is take your time. Build it up with slow levels of light and dark. There we go. And I'm almost done here. This is actually kind of fun. And by applying your skills and trying and failing and making mistakes and redoing it, that's how you learn. That's how you're going to get better at this. And it's also good to have, you know, instruction. And I'm going to stop right there. I think I don't want to overdo it. Gosh, let's see. Okay, now let's take a look at this if we shrink down this image here. So I'll take my little magnifying glass and hold down Option on my Mac keyboard. See that little magnifying glass goes negative. And this is a good way to check your image. Make it smaller, and that'll help you with seeing if your values are matching up. Image, I'm gonna right click, nope. Image, adjust. Let's see, what happens if we hide the original drawing underneath? So that's what it looks like with just the shadows and values. I'm going to create another layer here, put it underneath here, and let's see. Yeah. Okay, this is what it looked like when we began. This is where we ended up with the values. All right, guys, that's the end of the video, and I will talk to you later. Have a great day.